A lot of people think this is what grocery budgeting is all about, sifting through receipts, punching numbers in complicated spreadsheets. But to be honest, all of this couldn't be further from the truth. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we've kept our food spend under control without apps, without tracking every single dollar, and despite having 3 growing children to feed. So I was asked how we do our budgeting in the comments recently, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to make this sound really sophisticated and complex so people take it seriously? And then I thought, well, look, there are loads and loads of budgeting systems out there that are very popular, and I'll give you my views on a couple of them in a moment. But really and truthfully, what we do is very simple. And that's mainly because I'm the kind of guy who believes the only way to build long-term sustainable habits is by keeping things straightforward. So what we do involves just 3 steps. And the first one is to understand what you're spending today. And that does require a little bit of work and a few calculations, but it's not exactly Stephen Hawking level math. Now, if I rewind about 5 years, I basically had no idea what we were spending on food. I had this feeling it was more than it needed to be, essentially because I was looking at our bank balance at the end of the month and it wasn't what I wanted it to be, but I had no knowledge on which to base any decisions. So here's what I did. I pulled out my last 3 months worth of bank statements and I categorized absolutely everything. Groceries, takeaways, coffee shops, snacks, even top-up shops, even liquor. And yes, we can't buy liquor from the same place where we buy food here. Don't get me started on that, but at least it does make splitting out your alcohol spend a little bit easier. So anyway, it took me a while the first time. Remember though, this is about setting up a system that you're gonna do forever. It's got to be sustainable. It's not like some sort of fad diet that you try for 6 weeks or even 6 months. So once you've got your categories, you can just replicate this whole step every month very, very easily. And so very quickly, doing this showed up some big numbers and that highlighted where we had problems. Now in our case, groceries were creeping up because we were buying more and more convenience foods. But actually the big hits were coming from things like coffee shops and buying treats and snacks when we went out places with the kids. Anyway, regardless of where your money's going, this isn't about shaming yourself. It's just data, right? And it gave me a baseline to work from, and it'll do the same thing for you. Now you'll probably find it's helpful to work out each category then as a proportion of the total you spend each month. And that's going to give you another really helpful benchmark as these figures change over time. And remember, by the end of this first stage, you haven't actually done anything toward hitting a budget as such, but you have got some invaluable essential context that you're going to use in the next step. Okay, now the next step, step 2, is where you set yourself some realistic goals. I find goals are incredibly important. If they're kind of stretching but realistic, then they can be very motivating. So Holly and I sat down and we just picked out 1 or 2 things to work on. Very important. We didn't try and overhaul our entire lifestyle overnight. I think you just want to try and create some momentum in the direction you want to head, especially if, let's say, you've been living off of takeout for like a decade. Going cold turkey may not be all that successful. You'll just get down on yourself and you're more likely to give up. So for us, that was setting ourselves goals like cutting our eating out costs by 20%, reducing our coffee shop spend by 10%. Cutting down what we spent in coffee shops, I mentioned this before, was a big goal for us. And that's why we ended up buying that thing over there, which I've talked about in another video. Have a look if you're interested in some very sensible investments that you could be making to bring your food costs down. But that wasn't the end of it, because what we did then was to turn those percentages into kind of something real, like a real occasion. And this, I think, is so important for most of us, because it's hard otherwise just to sort of conceptualize what all these numbers mean. It's kind of like saying you want to run 5 kilometers, but you never track and you never check how far you've actually run. This is very, very easy though. You just take the saving you want to make in dollars or pounds or whatever other currency, and you work out if it equates to 1 takeout or 2 coffee runs. But then instead of concentrating on what we were trying to cut out, we focused on what we would do that was left. So, for example, with the takeout, we said, okay, the saving we want to make means we can allow ourselves 1 takeout every 2 weeks. And this is just how our brains work, right? Where it's easier and more effective in the long run to work towards what we want rather than constantly trying to avoid what we don't want. And I will say this again, long-term sustainable change is what you're really after here. No crash budgeting that leaves you desperately unhappy and then getting that Uber Eats guy back around every night for a week. Okay, before we go any further, if you're enjoying this and you're getting some value from it, please give me a like or subscribe to the channel, to Grocery Dad, because that goes a very long way indeed to helping me create more interesting stuff that you might also enjoy in the future. So we've got our grocery spend tracked, we've set ourselves a couple of realistic goals, And now comes the third and final, and frankly, the most crucial step of all. And it is what I think the whole idea of grocery budgeting really comes down to, because none of the tracking, none of the targeting is going to make the slightest bit of difference if we don't get this right. And it all boils down to your list. Now for us, I would go so far as to say, instead of all those spreadsheets and receipts, our grocery list is the budget. But it's not any old list. Because you see, the principle we use and what's kept our grocery spend under control for many years now is that we build it around ingredients, not meals. So we have around 20 items that go on there more or less every week in, week out. And then we have probably about another 20 that go on the list roughly every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on what we need. And together, these ingredients feed all 5 of us. They stretch across multiple meals and they give us loads of flexibility and loads of variety in what we eat. Big advantages in terms of our budget are we buy less because we never ever add any impulse snacks. We waste less because everything we buy has a purpose, and we spend less because we're not buying ultra processed meals or things that only serve us once. Bonus advantage, by the way, is that it makes going to the store incredibly efficient because all you have to do is just scoot round knowing where all these ingredients live. And if you shop somewhere like Aldi, like we do, I strongly recommend you might want to do that. You literally just have to walk around the edge of the store unless you're getting something like bin bags or cling film. So if it's not on the list, it's not in the cart, and that is how we keep our grocery spend consistent, even with a growing family. Now, obviously, I do check our bank statements every month to keep an eye on things, but I'm definitely not living out of a spreadsheet or counting every cent as we spend it. And just to show you how effective this really is, here's some real numbers from the past few years for us. 4 years ago, in 2021, we were averaging about $200 a week on groceries. 2 adults, 2 children. Today, we're about $330 a week. Before you go, David, that is a huge jump. What on earth are you talking about? Bear in mind that once I account for inflation and the fact we're now feeding 3 extra mouths instead of 2, plus the 2 we already had are bigger, or at least their stomachs are. In real terms, our cost per person is flat, we've kept our budget in line, and our grocery costs are almost exactly the same. Now, as I say, I'm not tracking every cent every week, and I'm not using any kind of complex tracking system, but obviously, different things are going to work for different people. The approach we use is repeatable, it is sustainable, and above all, it works for us. But there are other ways of doing things. There's this Dave Ramsey guy, for example. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's very well known, very respected, and he promotes this more sort of zero-based budgeting idea where every dollar you earn is assigned a job: groceries, bills, debts, savings. This is really useful if you're someone that needs to get control over your spending as a whole. If you've got debts you need to address, because he focuses a lot on getting those paid first. It's very structured, and that could be exactly what you need. On the other hand, it could be kind of rigid for you, maybe quite time consuming. Probably the biggest challenge I would have with it is that it's not grocery specific. It's an overall budgeting system, but it won't help you shop smarter within groceries specifically if that's an area that you're targeting, which you might be since you're watching this video. But I am interested to know, so in the comments, let me know, have you used Dave Ramsey's system specifically to help you get your grocery budget under control, and has it worked for you? Another one I came across was You Need a Budget. Have you heard of this one? It's built out of an app. It seems kind of similar to the Dave Ramsey approach. You give every dollar a job, and according to the reviews that I've read, it's helping folks to cut debt and cover emergency spending. So that all sounds good to me. It will cost you $100 a year, mind you, to get the app. And again, it's not going to help you to make smarter grocery decisions specifically. Now, one that is specific to your weekly grocery shop is this guy, Will Coleman's 6-to-1 grocery method. See if I can remember. 6 vegetables, 5 fruits, 4 proteins, 3 starches, 2 sauces or spreads, and 1 fun item. Relatively easy to remember, keeps you away from the impulse junk. Interestingly, if you add up 6 down to 1, you get 21 items, and our list has 20. So that is an intriguing similarity and coincidence. I like this as a sort of a shopping template, like a rough guide for what your cart should look like by the end of your trip. But I would still kind of want to have some numbers and some goal in mind first. And well, personally, I just like naming my 20 items on my list. It means it's very, very hard to go wrong, and I don't have to keep count of stuff in the store either. But look, ultimately, it's got to work for you, and it's got to be something you're going to do for years, not just for a few weeks or a few months. So if you're brand new to grocery budgeting, if you want to get your grocery bills down, your best bet might be to try a couple of these things, a couple of different approaches, before you settle on the one that you like the most. Okay, so there you have my approach to grocery budgeting that has been working for us for the last 5 years at least. It's very simple. Some might say overly simple. Either way, there's plenty to talk about, which I hope you will in the comments. So let me know. Do you do something similar, Or do you do something very, very different? What do you think of this system? What do you think of this approach to manage your grocery budget and keep your bills under control? Remember to sign up for the Grocery Dad newsletter because it's full of loads more free tips and ideas. And if you're intrigued to know what those 20 items are on my list every week, then look no further than this video up here. Thanks for being here. Hope to see you again next week.